Ananjaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome to the Isopanisad Bhakti Shastri class. Yesterday we finished the discussion on mantra 7. Today we will take mantra 8, which is the last mantra in the second section. If you remember, the second section is, how to see the Ishwar by spiritual vision. The Ishwar has inconceivable attributes. Mantra 4 and 5 spoke. And how we should develop spiritual vision to see the Ishwar. But before we develop that spiritual vision to see the Ishwar, we have to develop spiritual vision to see the material. Within the material, we have to see the spiritual. That everything in this world, we have to see with equal vision, the things, the events, and how to see that everyone in everyone's heart, there is the Supreme Soul in the form of Paramatma. So mantra 5 and 6, 6 and 7 spoke about it. So now in mantra 8, in the Isopanishads, now having developed this spiritual vision, as described in mantra 6 and 7, now we can see the spiritual with spiritual vision. Because we have already developed the spiritual vision to see within the material, we are able to see the spiritual. Now, with that qualification, we can see with spiritual vision the spiritual, that is the absolute truth. So, the absolute truth's transcendental attributes are being discussed in mantra 8. It's a very interesting mantra. Okay, let's recite mantra 8. सपर्यागच्चुक्रमकायम् अवर्णम् अश्नावीरं शुद्धम् अपापविद्धम् मनीषी परिभू स्वयंभू याथा ततोऽर्थान् वेददाच्छाश्वतिभ्य समाभ्य. Saha, such a person. So this such a person, Saha, refers to whom? Who will answer this? Whom is this referring to, this such a person? And who will answer this? Whom is this referring to? Mohan Rup Sham Prabhuji, whom it is referring to?
It refers to the person who understood the Supreme Soul, or who realized the soul and super soul
Where is he
difference.
described? Where is he being described?
No, we have been talking now, Prabhuji, like the person who should have the spiritual vision to know that,
But
to see
where
the
that
spiritual.
description is there in the
Yeah.
Isopanisad? Where it is described? Where it is described? Archana Mataji had raised her hand first. Okay. Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, I missed many classes, but just now you have narrated in the 6 and 7.
Yes, it is in mantra 6 and 7.
And those who can see God in with a material vision
Those who can see the within the
in the
material
material
spiritual.
within the material. Yes.
Yes, yes. So such a person refers to the person which is described in mantra 6 and 7. Must factually know Paryagach, the greatest of all, Paribhu, the personality of Godhead, Shukram, who is unembodied, Akayam. And we will go into a lot of detail of what this term Akayam means. Because, he is unembodied. We have heard embodied, but we have never heard unembodied. Proper translates very precisely this as unembodied. Omniscient, Kavi, beyond reproach, Avranam, without veins, Ashnaviram, pure, Shuddham, and uncontaminated, Apapaviddham. The self-sufficient, Swayambhu, philosopher, Kavi, Manishi. Actually, philosopher is a Manishi. Kavi is already dead. Who has been fulfilling everyone's desire. Yatha tato arthan vedach. When? Since time immemorial. Shashvatibhya samabhya. Sama means the samaya. And Shashvati means immemorial. Since time immemorial, he's been fulfilling everyone's desire. So the link to mantra 8, the link to mantra 8 is that mantra 6 and 7 spoke about how to develop spiritual vision to see people, events, and things in this world. When we can see spiritual in the material, then we can see spiritual beyond the material, because the Lord is beyond the material. Now, mantra 8 enumerates how we realize with spiritual vision the attributes of the supreme absolute truth or the supreme reality. So I hope you got the connection between mantra 7 and 8, and in one sense, it is linked between 6, 7, and 8 also. Now, the Lord's attributes have been mentioned in this. The Lord's characteristics are mentioned. He's akayam. He has not having a material body or no material body, we can say. He does not possess a material body. Shukram, he's omnipotent, cannot be subjected to criticism. Avranam, because the Lord performed Ras Leela, so we can comment, how can the Lord do this? He is beyond reproach. He has no veins, Ashnaviram. So this will be connected to Akayam, and when we discuss that, we will come to that. Pure, uncontaminated, Shuddham, Apapaviddham. Omniscient, he is Kavi. Philosopher, Manishi, greatest of all, Paribhu, self-sufficient Swayambhu, who fulfills everyone desires. So these are the 10 characteristics of the absolute truth which are mentioned in this mantra. So now let's come to the mantra 8 overview. Prabhupada speaks about Akayam, unembodied, and Ashnaviram, without veins, in paragraph 1 and 2. So let us go to paragraph 1 and 2 of the Isopanishads. Okay, who will read? Volunteers? Mohan Rupsham Prabhuji. We will first give chance to Mohan Rupsham Prabhuji. Yes. Paragraph 1 and 2.
Yes, Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Here is a description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to the forms of the mundane world. The forms of the living entity in this world are embodied in material nature, and they work like any material machine. The anatomy of a material body must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth. But the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord has nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied, which means that there is no difference between his body and his soul, nor is he forced to accept a body according to the laws of nature as we are. In materially conditioned life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. For the Supreme Lord, however, there is never any such difference between him and his body and mind. He is the complete whole, and his mind, body, and he himself are all one and the same.
Okay, continue paragraph. No, okay, hold on. We will just, although these two themes are there, we will now. We know embodiment. The soul is embodied in gross and subtle bodies. But what does unembodied mean? Prabhupada translates Akayam as unembodied. What does unembodied mean? Anyone? What does unembodied mean? Yes, Dr. Archana Mataji.
It's just a case, Prabhuji. Unembodied means not restricted to body. It is not limited by body or any structural form.
Okay. Yeah. See, the soul in the material world gets embodied by gross and subtle matter. So we have a subtle body and a gross body. And when death happens, the soul becomes disembodied. So there is embodiment, accepting the gross and subtle bodies, and giving up the gross body is disembodiment. Disembodiment means that he loses the gross body, and especially in the case of a ghost, when because of suicide or other sinful activity, if somebody is in a ghost body, then he's disembodied. He doesn't have a gross body. So, but the Lord is explained as unembodied because he doesn't accept a gross and subtle body. And that's why Prabhupada translates Akayam as unembodied. But this Akayam, if you just in a general sense read, Kayam means body, Akayam means no body. So the Lord has no body. So that what is the Mayavadis might interpret. But Prabhupada, right in the translation, he mentions is that he's the personality of Godhead, that he's having a personality, he's having a form, eternal form, and it is not formless. And his form is a transcendental form, which is different from the mundane forms. And the mundane forms are embodied beings. That's why we called as the embodied being transfers from the child's body to a youth body to old age. Embodied beings, they are called. But the Lord is not uh, embodied, but is unembodied. But he is having a spiritual body. that is what is the meaning. He's got a spiritual body. He never gets embodied by gross and subtle matter. So let us go into this concept, which is very, very important, Akayam. Akayam, unembodied, and Ashnaviram, without wings. This verse describes God as Akayam, having no body. And then as Ashnaviram, having no veins. If God has no body, why is there a need to describe that he has no veins? So we were saying that, akayam means having no body, but having no material body, but a spiritual body. Oh, then you might say this is your interpretation, this is not Shastric interpretation. If that is so, then why would the mantra say Ashnaviram having no veins? If somebody is uh, not having a cloth, he's not wearing a cloth, he's not wearing a shirt and pant, then, there is no need to say that, he's not wearing a tie. When he's not wearing clothes, there is no question of wearing tie. Or if somebody is not having a home, a house, then there is no question of, saying that, he doesn't have a bedroom or he doesn't have a chair in the house because he doesn't possess a house. So, but the Ish Upanishad's mantra is very emphatic. It says Ashnaviram, no wings. That means akaya means it doesn't mean that he doesn't have any body, no body, but he has a spiritual body, and that spiritual body doesn't have veins. That's why if God has no body, why is there a need to describe that he has no veins? The Ishopanishad wants us to rise to the higher understanding that God has a special kind of body that has no veins. He's got a special body with no veins, and that is a spiritual body. That is a spiritual body. The speciality of God's body is conveyed by describing him as akayam, because the word kaya, body, has several connotations that do not apply to God. A body is that which is separate from the real person, the soul. But Prabhupada in the purport mentioned that there is no difference between the Lord's body, mind, and the soul. It's one. But kaya for us has several connotations. Body means it is separate from the soul. Body is a product of past karma of the soul, and it tends to degrade the soul by stimulating material desires. So the body can get degraded because of engaging in sense gratification. And a body means it has to be given up in due course of time. So kaya denotes all this. And Prabhupada also, if you see in the purport, brought out these points that, he's not forced to accept a body according to laws of nature as we are. There's no difference between his body and soul. He's unembodied, which means no difference between the body and soul. So kaya has these connotations, which we are familiar. None of these apply to God, whose body and soul are non-different, who has no karmic past, who's never degraded. All the activities the Lord does, even the Ras Leela, from a material perspective, there are some so-called, philosophers, the so-called spiritualists who say that because the Lord performed Ras Leela, so now he's suffering in hell. The Lord has no past, karmic past. The Lord can never get degraded. And we'll come to that. Shuddham apapa viddham. What to speak? Hearing the Ras Pancha there will purify us of the Bhava Roga, which is Kama Roga, Hrida Roga it is, and whose body is eternal. So none of these apply for the Lord. So that's why it is akayam. Because we tend to superimpose our material conceptions on God, the scriptures sometimes use negative connotations like akayam to emphasize that God does not have any body like us. Now, Prabhupada mentioned that the material body which is embodied is like a machine. Material forms are temporary, so attraction to them leads only to eventual frustration. But God's form is eternal, so attraction to his form leads to ultimate fulfillment. So this is different between the material forms and the spiritual form of the Lord. The negative scriptural statement that God doesn't have a form like us saves us from the frustration, and the positive scriptural statements lead us to fulfillment. Now, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Sarvabhaum Samvad, there is a conversation which is happening between there's a conversation which is happening between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. And Gopinath Acharya is his relative. And there's a conversation which happens between Gopinath Acharya and the disciples of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. So I'm just bringing out how with our material conception we try to superimpose. This was a point it's mentioned, we superimpose material conceptions on God. So this conversation will help us to understand. शिष्य कहे ईश्वर तत् सादि अनुमाने, आचार्य कहे अनुमाने नहीं ईश्वर ज्ञाने. Now, I'm just bringing out few points. The Mayavadi philosophers in particular have certain hypotheses about the absolute truth. They make some logical hypotheses just on tarka. Sadi anumani, just by anuman praman, they make speculation. They reason that in the material world, we experience that everything is created. So this is their reasoning. Everything in this material world is created. Yes, we all agree. If we trace the history of anything, we find a creator. Therefore, there must be a creator of this huge cosmic manifestation. By such reasoning, they come to a conclusion that a higher power has created this cosmic manifestation. So everything in our experience, we see that there is a creation, anything, and there is a creator. So they logically conclude that this whole cosmic manifestation, the creation, has a creator. Now, up till here, do you find anything wrong with the logical hypothesis of the Mayavadis or these disciples here of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya up till here? Do you find anything wrong? Do you find anything wrong here? Raise your hands if you want to answer. Is it right or no? Their understanding is right. Yes. Yes or no? This kind of logical deduction, is it right?
Yes. Is it correct?
It's correct. But then where they go wrong, let us see. The Mayavadis do not accept this great power to be a person. So this is their problem. Yes, there is this great cosmic manifestation. So there has to be a very great brain who is, very, very huge. Their brains cannot accommodate the fact that the huge cosmic manifestation can be created by a person. They doubt this because as soon as they think of a person, they think of a person within the material world with limited potency. This is one of the defects. Then second, sometimes the Mayavadi philosophers will accept Lord Krishna or Lord Ram as Bhagwan, but they think of the Lord as a person having a material body. The Mayavadis do not understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a spiritual body. They think of Krishna as a great personality, a human being, within whom there is the supreme impersonal power, Brahman. Now, not only these Mayavadis think, Prabhupada in the later purports, we will exactly look into that purport. He says that even the demigods think like this. In fact, the Guna avatars are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And whenever there is some cosmic disturbance in the cosmos, these devatas ultimately go and pray to Vishnu in the Shira Sagar. And Vishnu is considered as the supreme among the demigods. And they think also, oh, beyond this Shiradakshay Vishnu, who resides in the Shir Sagar, he also derives his power from the impersonal Brahman. So if the demigods can be in this kind of a misconception, then what to speak about these tiny living beings on planet Earth? So they also think that Krishna is a great personality from whom there is a supreme impersonal power, that is Brahman. Therefore, they finally conclude that the impersonal Brahman is the supreme, not the personality Krishna. This is the basis of Mayavad philosophy. This is the basis of Mayavad philosophy. Okay, this is regarding Akayam. So any questions you have regarding this? Otherwise, we can go to next mantra. Yes, Mohan Rup Shamprabhu.
This Akayam is only for Krishna or for all the people in the spiritual planet? For example, in Goloka Vrindavan.
Yes, once you get a spiritual body, and that time you have a spiritual body, the mind is spiritual and the soul, everything is spiritual. So then it applies to the Nitya Siddhas also there. But here specifically, it is referring to the Lord here, because we have to understand the transcendental attributes of the Lord. So let us go the other way around, that how does self-realization begin? It begins with distinction between matter and spirit. And I am spiritual. And I am spiritual. And this spiritual part belongs to the supreme spiritual. That is the supreme soul. So that's how, we connect to the absolute reality. So similarly, the supreme reality is completely a spiritual being. And then his associates there in the spiritual world are also having the same attributes. Yes. I hope it is clear. Any other questions regarding Akayam? Okay. So, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, when Mahaprabhu is conversing with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he refutes the Mayavad philosophy there. And there, there are these hermeneutics established. Hermeneutics means the right way of understanding or interpreting the scriptures. So there, Mahaprabhu, one of the hermeneutic argument he presents is Sa Ikshate. And he glanced and the creation began. So we know that, only when the glance of Mahavishnu falls on Pradhan, then the Mahatattva, and then all the elements are created, the body, mind, and senses are later on created. So the senses, eyes are also senses, but they are not created. So who is that person who glanced? And he glanced means he has also eyes. And the eyes are not yet created because the creation has not yet happened. So then what are those eyes which glance? So those eyes are spiritual eyes. They are not material eyes. So this is, the right way of understanding Akayam. It's not where we are interpreting. This is the right way of interpreting Akayam. And in, the 10 types of Praman, there is one Praman called as Arthapatti. And we will come to that when we discuss the next purport. Arthapatti means, we have two logically true statements, just like, Ravi does not eat. And then Ravi is growing fat. Now, both the statements are true, but they look, this is a little humorous, but this is the example given of Arthapatti. Then there is a third statement brought in to reconcile the two statements. What is the third statement? That Ravi must be secretly eating in the night. That's why he's growing fat. So similarly, in the Gajendra's prayers, one of the prayers is, Arupaya, Ururupaya. Arupaya means he doesn't have a form. Arupaya. Ururupaya means he has many forms. What is this? How these two statements can be true. So we'll have to bring in a third statement based on Arthapatti to prove the first two statements. Arupaya means no material form. He doesn't have no material form. Ururupaya means he has many spiritual forms because he comes in many incarnations. So like that. Okay. Continue, Mohan Rup Shah Prabhu. Paragraph 2.
In the Brahma Samhita 5.1, there is a similar description of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Satchitananda Vigraha, which means that he is the eternal form fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. As such, it does not require a separate body or mind as we do in material existence. The Vedic literature clearly states that the Lord's transcendental body is completely different from ours. Thus, he is sometimes described as formless. This means that he has no form like ours and that he is devoid of a form we can conceive of. In the Brahma Samhita 5.32, it is further stated that with each and every part of his body, he can do the work of the other senses. This means that the Lord can walk with his hands, accept things with his legs, see with his hands and feet, eat with his eyes. In the Shruti mantras, it is also said that although the Lord has no hands and legs like ours, he has different types of hands and legs by which he can accept all that we offer him and run faster than anyone. These parts are confirmed in this eighth mantra through the use of the words like Sukram,
Omnipotent.
omnipotent.
So the Lord's form, Akaya, is unembodied, and unembodied means it doesn't mean that he doesn't have a form. He has a Satchidananda form. He has a spiritual form, which is made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And even for us, this conception of a form of Satchidananda Vigraha, Ishvara Paramakrishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. This is also a little, it doesn't fit in our material condition state. A form made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, how is it, because we have a understanding of forms made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, which are embodied forms. But this form is, Satchidananda Vigraha. So, in the to get an understanding of this, just an example, just like a cake completely made of icing. They put the cream, and say the mother on the birthday of the kid makes an entire form of the kid, and that entire form which is created is completely made of what? The cream. So similarly, the Lord's entire form is composed of Satchit Ananda. Satchit and Ananda. That are the ingredients of it. Just like the cake, which completely resembles the child form, is composed only of cream. So to fathom also the form of the Lord, which is composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, is also very difficult for us. And the Lord's form is transcendental, different from us. And that's why it is sometimes described as formless. This we have already discussed. And Prabhupada is giving the inconceivable attributes of that spiritual form. Anganiyasya saklendra indriya. Anganiyasya saklendriya vrittimanti. Pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti. Ananda chinmaya sadhujvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajavami. Each of his limbs can perform the functions of others. Like the eyes can eat. No material form through the eyes we can eat. And then Prabhupada quotes the Shruti mantras. The Shruti mantras mention that he has no hands, no legs. So that mention of no hands, no legs, it sometimes describes him as formless. It doesn't mean that he has no material hands, no material legs, but he has spiritual hands and spiritual legs, which can, right from Golokunda, sitting there, Any offering you make here in Mathura Desh or in Mathura Mandal, his hands can immediately pick it up. That is how his spiritual hands are. So that's how we have to understand. So I'll just quote this now verse, which is there. This is the Shruti mantra which Prabhupada is speaking about. That is from the Svetakshara Upanishads. Apanipado javano grihita pashyat achakshu na shunotyakarna savetti vedam na chatasyasti vetta tamahuragrayam purusham mahantam. He has no feet and hands. Apanipado. Pani means hand, pado means feet. A means no. It is cancelling. Yet he is swiftest runner and can grasp anything. Javano Grahita. And especially his pure devotee makes offer with pure devotion, he comes and grasps it. Although without eyes or ears, he sees and hears. Pashyati achakshu sa shunoti akarna. Achakshu means no eyes. Pashyati means he sees. So that means Shunoti means to hear, Akarna means he has no ears. So the meaning is he has no material ears or no material eyes, but he has spiritual eyes and spiritual ears. And this spiritual eyes, right sitting in Golok Vrindavan, he can see everything. That is the potency. Shukram was mentioned. Na? Shukram means the Lord is omnipotent. Now, what to speak of the Lord? Even Yamaraj, who is, whose capital is in the Pitralok, Sanyamapuri, it is called. Sitting there, he is able to see every activity of the Jiva who is performing here, activities, and he is able to record it. There's Chitragupta. Gupta means very confidential. Chitra means he's taking all the pictures of all our activities. So Yamraj has the potency by which he can observe sitting there, right there, the activities of all the living entities. All the living entities. Imagine that. Huh? And then Brahmaji, he's also having partial omniscience. Sitting in Brahmalok, he's able to, oversee and look and observe the activities of every jiva in the 14 planet systems. And then Abho Shiva was got partial omniscience, more compared to Brahma. Then what to speak of the Lord? Nobody knows him. Savetti Vedam na. Yet he is a knower and the object of knowledge. Na tasyasti vettatam. He is a knower and is the object of our knowledge. Sages describe him as the supreme original personality of God. Tam agram purusham mahantam. So he is a purusha. So this Arthapati also, here we apply this Arthapati. He has no feet, but he runs. That means he has no material feet, but he has spiritual feet. So that's how through Arthapati we reconcile. Okay. Let's go to paragraph 3. Paragraph 3 speaks about Shukram, omnipotent. So paragraph 2 only, Prabhupada in the last line introduced omnipotent. So from there, 3 and 4 speak about Shukram. So let us go to paragraph 3 and 4. 2 we have already covered. So let's go to 3 and 4. So who will read paragraphs 3 and 4? Omnipotent. Prabhupada is already mentioned here. 3 and 4. Who will read? Any hands? Dhanalakshmi Mataji, yes. Yes, Dhanalakshmi Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
The Lord's worshipable form, Archa Vigraha, which is installed in temples by authorized acharyas, who have realized the Lord in terms of mantra 7 is non-different from the original form of the Lord. The Lord's original form is that of Sri Krishna, and Sri Krishna expands himself into an unlimited number of forms such as Baladeva, Rama, Narsimha, and Varaha. All of these forms are one and the same personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Archa Vigraha worshipped in temples is also an expanded form of the Lord. By worshipping the Archa Vigraha, one can at once approach the Lord, who accepts the service of a devotee by his omnipotent energy. The Archa Vigraha of the Lord descends at the request of the
Acharya.
Acharyas, the holy teachers, and the workers, and works exactly in the original way of the Lord by virtue of the Lord's omnipotence. Foolish people who have no knowledge of Sri Isopanisad or of any of other Shruti mantras consider the Archa Vigraha, which is worshipped by pure devotees, to be made of material elements. This form may be seen as material by the imperfect eyes of foolish people or Kanishta Adhikaris, but such people do not know that the Lord, being omnipotent and omniscient, can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as he desires.
Next paragraph also.
In Bhagavad Gita 9.11 to 12, the Lord regrets the fallen condition of men with little knowledge who deride him because he descends like a man into this world. Such poorly informed persons do not know the omnipotence of the Lord. Thus, the Lord does not manifest himself in full to the mental speculators. He can be appreciated only in proportion to one's surrender to him. The fallen condition of the living entities is due entirely to forgetfulness of their relationship with God.
So in these two paragraphs, if you see, the Prabhupada is speaking about the omnipotence of the Lord, Shukra. And what is the omnipotence of the Lord? That the Lord manifests in the form of Archa Vigraha. The Lord is having a transcendental form, and the original form is Krishna, and he expands unlimitedly as Rama, Baldev, Narsimha, Vara. All these are Bhagwan. Even the Archa Vigraha is also the expanded form of the Lord. Please remember that. And this Archa Vigraha, which is established by Acharyas who are at the level of Mantra 7. Mantra 7 is speaking about the Mahabhagavat, who is seeing with equal vision. And when they establish it, then they are non-different, and it exactly acts like, how the Lord in person acts. And that's why it is said, in the pastime, Sakshi Gopal pastime, when this young Brahmana went and spoke to the Lord, you have to come. And the Lord spoke. That how can I come? I'm a deity. When you can talk, you can walk also, he said. So it acts exactly like the Lord. And why it acts like that? Because of the omnipotency of the Lord. And the Archa Vigraha descends by the request of the Acharyas and the holy teachers. So here we will speak about the concept of symbolism. And the Lord's form, in the form of Archa Vigraha, is also, that's why it is called as the Archa Avatar. It's avatar. It's an incarnation. And also the Lord also incarnates in the form of Nam. That's why it is called as Nam Avatar. Nam Avatar. So there is always this interpretation done about this verse from the Shvetashar Upanishads. Na tasya pratima asti. He doesn't have any form. They only interpret this part of the verse. But the full verse of the Shvetashar Upanishads is what? Nainam urdvam na tiryasham na madde pari parijagrabhat chagrabhat na tasya pratimasti yasya nama mahadyasha. So they only interpret this part, na tasya pratimasti, that he doesn't have any form. Pratima, there is no tasya pratimasti. There is no form of his, And in the Chaitanya Charitamrit, Pratima nahi tumi sakshat Rajendra Nandan has been proved. So this right understanding of this verse is no one can nainam grasp him pari jagrabat, above, across, or in the middle. Urdhvam na tiryasyam na madhe. You cannot grasp him either above, in the middle, or across. There is no likeness of him. Na tasya pratima asti. There is no likeness of him. His name is Great Glory. Yasya nama Mahan Yasha. So Baldev Vidyabhushan, in his commentary to this, Na Tatsya Matimashti, he translates, nothing can compare with the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no likeness to him. So sometimes the great poets and the self-realized souls also, they, to give a idea of the transcendental beauty of the Lord, they compare him to the beauty which we can experience in this world, like Abhinava Dhara Jala Sundar Hai, just like a newly formed dark cloud. That's the, that is what you can visualize must be the color of the transcendental body of the Lord. Or the Lord's eyes are compared to the lotus petal because the lotus is considered to be very, very beautiful. So this is given because we are material conditioned, but the Lord's beauty is millions and millions of times greater than the lotus or even the newly formed cloud. But just to give an understanding for us, that's why there is no likeness of him. Na tasya pratimasti. That is the real meaning of na tasya pratimasti. So nothing can compare with the transcendental form of the personality of Godhead. So there is one prayer of a devotee. I don't know where it is in Lalit Madhav or Vidat Madhav. This devotee, when he actually had the darshan of the Lord and saw the beauty of the Lord, so he says that, that I was so foolish that I thought I was glorifying you by, comparing you with the beauty of the things in this world. But having now seen your transcendental form, nothing can compare your form with anything in this material world. So it's like, he says, just like, actually, I thought I was glorifying you, but it was not glorifying you. I was demeaning you, he says. So it's like, if you glorify mm, the, if you compare the king of the world to the, uh, somebody who's just ruling a village, that is not actually glorification, because the king of the world is really glorious, but you're just comparing him with a person who rules a village. So similarly, the things of the world which we compare, that can come nowhere near to the transcendental form of the Lord. So na tasya pratima asti. So that is the right understanding. So we spoke about this yesterday also, and Prabhupada again brings up this in the purport today, that in the Archa Vigraha, the form may be seen as material by imperfect eyes of foolish people or Kanishtadikaris. So please remember, Prabhupada is speaking about the materialist, and even we devotees, if we are at the Kanishtadikari level, so we can have this misconception, and that's why we should be very careful. So uh, that which is spiritual, we see it as material, then it becomes an offense, and that is the Kanishtadikari level. So we should be very, very careful about it. Now, Prabhupada spoke about in the purport about, that the Archa Vigraha of the Lord descends at the request of the acharyas, the holy teachers, and works exactly in the way of the Lord by virtue of the Lord's omnipotence, Shukra. So, in this context, we would like to discuss this symbolism. How many of you have heard this concept of symbolism, ascending symbolism and descending symbolism? Raise your hands. How many of you have come across this? Mohan Rup Sham Prabhuji?
Bhagavad Gita we studied, na Prabhu, that Aroganam, that one?
No, Aropanta and Avropanta it is. Symbolism.
Yes.
Symbolism.
Symbolism.
How many of you have come across this? I don't think so many have come across this. Yes. So let us go into this. So in symbolism, there are two types, ascending and descending. Ascending symbolism means that we ascribe a concrete, tangible symbol to an abstract concept. For example, the flag of a nation is an ascending symbol for the concept of nationhood. So we have Desha Bhakti, and that Desh Bhakti is an abstract concept within us, and that mental concept we symbolize through a flag, you know, and the red and the white and the green, the Indian flag, or any other country flag. So moment you see that flag, immediately there is, devotion, Desh Bhakti, Jagrati ho jata hai hamare andar. So this is a concept of the ascending symbolism. So we ascribe a concrete, tangible symbol to an abstract concept, and the example is flag and nation concept. Some people feel that the deity is similarly a symbol of God. So deity is just what? A symbol, idol, it is called, idolatry. Devotional feelings can be invoked more easily by beholding the deity than by thinking of a concept of God. So by beholding the symbol of God, devotional feelings can be arisen just by some abstract concept. So that's why deity is a symbol of God. That's what is the understanding. In ascending symbolism, we, by our imagination, project upwards to God. We ascribe some symbol to him. Example, company logos. So, you know the logo of Puma shoes. Yes? What is the logo of Puma shoes? Mohan Rup Sham Prabhu?
It's a cheetah, some animal running.
Panther, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that symbol, moment you see that symbol, you immediately, identify the company. Oh, this is the company. Or any other examples you have of company logos which immediately invoke the company which is manufacturing those products. Any others? Yes, Parth
This is
Sarva Prabhu.
Apple.
Yeah, tell me. Yes, Mohan Rusham Prabhu, you can tell me.
Apple, Prabhu. Apple.
Apple, yes. Yes, Apple is there. Somebody typed Nike shoes, So there are many companies which are very famous for their logos. So immediately this symbol projects, what the company is dealing with. And it can go up till God. When there is an artificially mentally constructed connection between the symbol and the symbolized, doesn't work for persons. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives of a person's photo. So, the husband might keep the wife's photo in the purse and seeing the photo, no? That photo is actually of his wife only. It's exactly the wife. But, uh, he might, feel some emotions seeing the photo. But still, the photo cannot reciprocate with that person, nor the photo can hear the, prayers or the offering or whatever it is. But with respect to deity of a supreme being is much more than a photo of ordinary human being. Deity can be called an example of descending symbolism. See, ultimately, the photo of the wife is there and her photo is taken. So the photo is like a descending symbolism, but deity is much more than the photo, because the deity is Archavigra, it is Shukra, it is omnipotent, because spirit can be turned into matter and matter can be turned into spirit by the omnipotency of the Lord, and especially the holy teachers and acharyas, because when they pray to the Lord, that during the Pran Pratishtha, when they pray that, that please, my Lord, you come and accept our offering here, and the Lord is obliged, and the Lord is surrendered to his pure devotees. So when the Lord manifests, then the Pran Pratishtha happens. It's interesting, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, you know how the way he was operating and, opening temples. He used to send a small party and they used to start doing kirtan and book distribution. And then temple activities is to begin. And then the deity installation is to happen and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is to come. And during the Pran Pratishtha, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would just offer a flower at the lotus feet and pray, and the Lord would come and reside in that deity now. So once it so happened that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had come for a temple inauguration, Pran Pratishtha, and I think he was late for something, and some of his sannyasi disciples were doing the abhishek and they had offered the flower, the lotus feet, and they had begun the program. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, when he came, oh, the deity is already installed, he said. So, by the purity of the holy acharyas, in whose heart the Lord resides, the Archa Vigraha of the Lord descends at the request of the acharyas and the holy teachers. So, this is very important for us to remember. Pran Pratishtha is important, but apart from that, it is the request of the holy teachers and the acharyas. That is, the Lord becomes obliged. Lord is personally present there to reciprocate our love with his blessings. So that is the difference between the photo and the Archa Vigraha. Descending symbols is that, unlike ascending symbols, can't be changed at will or whimsy. So we might today, think, the third green part, much of agriculture is not happening in India today. So let's change the color of the flag. So still that abstract concept remains, and, Desh Bhakti can be there. So we can change at our will and whims, but especially deity, no. The Sapatya Shastra, Shilpa Shastras are given, how the Lord's measurements, everything is very clearly defined. So we cannot change at our will. God has his own form, and only the deity that depicts his form is to be worshipped. Is to be worshipped. So here in this context, I was trying to recollect something, like when there is in the Brihad Bhagavatamrit, the story of Gop Kumar, how he goes to higher realms. On earth in Govardhan, he goes to Swargaloka, where Indra is worshipping Vaman, then he goes to Brahmaloka, and then he goes into the 7 layers, avarns, coverings of this universe. And each of the coverings, there is the Lord's devotees who are worshipping their worshipable Archa Vigrahas. And Hanuman in Kim Purusha Loka is worshipping Lord Ram in the deity form. And it is mentioned that, Hanuman, when he was doing the deity worship of Lord Ram, he was exactly treating Lord Ram as a person, and he was dealing with him as he was dealing personally when Ram was present. So deity is non-different from the Lord. It is non-different from the Lord. So this we should have a clear understanding. Okay, so we have covered these concepts. Any questions on this? We'll go to this paragraph now. Okay, one question is there. Yes, Dr. Archana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dandavat Pranam. What about worshipping our Guru's photo or picture? Hare Krishna.
Yes, I got the question. Now, worship of the spiritual master is also non-different from worship of the Lord. Acharya mam vijaniya. In fact, worship of the spiritual master is superior to the worship of the Lord. So that is how the Shastras give the Siddhanta and conclusion. And I was recollecting that how Ramanujacharya is one of their disciple, their family, the wife. She was worshipping her deities at her home where the Paduka of Ramanujacharya. You know, and she considered them non-different from Ramanujacharya. What to speak of the Acharya? Even the paraphernalia used by the Acharya can be non-different from the Acharya, and the worship of the Acharya is non-different from the worship of the Lord. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when it speaks about the 64 limbs of Bhakti, and these limbs are, in relationship with the Lord. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadya anavritam anukulena krishnanu. We have to perform continuous favorable devotion to Krishna. And Krishna means Krishna's expansions, all the avatars, and anything related to Krishna. The things which are related to Krishna, which are called as Tadiya. The cows, Tulsi, spiritual master. And one verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu makes it very clear that all these limbs which are performed in relationship with the Lord are equally applicable in relation to the spiritual master. Equally applicable. So that's our Siddhanta. I hope it is clear. Yes, Dwarkadish Prabhuji. One more last question, and then we'll try to finish these two other paragraphs. And then, if time remains, we'll take up questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, the symbolism, I just understood the concept, but this the word ascending and descending, I could not get it. Why that word is used, ascending and descending?
We have an abstract concept of nationhood, Desha Bhakti.
Yeah.
And this is an abstract concept, and we symbolize through a flag. We give it a symbol in the form. Now, descending means that there is an original form, and that comes down in this world. That is the Archa Vigraha. That's why it is called as descending symbolism. And even for an example of the husband and wife I gave, the wife is there, and the photo is an example of descending symbolism. It's not ascending symbolism. There's no abstract concept of a conceptualization of a form of the wife. No, she's there present. And the photo is a ascending symbolism, example of the wife. Similarly, the deity is ascending. There is the original form of the Lord in the spiritual world, and the deity is non-different from that original. It has come from the higher realm. But ascending means we have a concept and we symbolize it through some abstract, abstract logo or some symbols. Like, I spoke about many symbols like Puma or Nike. Nike has that arrow sign, all that. So that's the difference between ascending symbolism and descending symbolism. I hope it is clear now.
Yeah. Okay, bro. Thanks.
Okay, so who will read this next paragraph? This paragraph speaks about fulfiller of all desires, paragraph 5 and 6. Fulfiller of all desires. So who will read this? Volunteers. Some hands had been raised. Who will read it? Devhuti Kapil Prabhu had raised his hand, as I remember. Yes, Rosie. Yes. In this mantra, paragraph 5 and 6.
Mantra, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
In this mantra, as well as in many other Vedic mantras, it is clearly stated that the Lord has been supplying goods to the living entities from time immemorial. A living being desires something, and the Lord supplies the object of that desire in proportion to one's qualification. If a man wants to be a High Court judge, he must acquire not only the necessary qualifications, but also the consent of the authority who can award the title of High Court judge. The qualification in themselves are not sufficient for one to occupy the post. It must be awarded by some superior authority. Similarly, the Lord awards enjoyment to living entities in proportion to their qualifications, but good qualifications in themselves are not sufficient to enable one to receive awards. The mercy of the Lord is also required.
Okay, you can continue this paragraph.
Ordinarily, the living being does not know what to ask from the Lord, nor which post to seek. When the living being comes to know his constitutional position, however, he asks to be accepted into the transcendental association of the Lord in order to render transcendental loving service unto him. Unfortunately, living beings under the influence of material nature ask for many other things, and they are described in Bhagavad Gita 2.41 as having divided or splayed intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is one, but mundane intelligence is diverse. In Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.30 to 31, it is stated that those who are captivated by temporary beauties of external energy forget the real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead. Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs, but this is like chewing what has already been chewed. Nonetheless, the Lord is so kind that He allows the forgetful living entity to continue in this way without interference. Thus, this mantra of Sri Isopanisad uses the very appropriate word yatha tatyatha, indicating that the Lord rewards the living entities just in pursuance of their desires. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allows him to do so without interference. And if he wants to go back home, back to Godhead, the Lord helps him.
So in these two paragraphs, Prabhupada speaks about qualification is required and bestowal, and the Lord does, he bestows. He is the bestower of the fulfiller of the desires of everyone. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahu Yo Vidati Kaman. So in this context, I wanted to discuss a very important concept. So there is two things required. There is qualification and there is bestowal. And Prabhupada is giving the example of a judge. It's not that just by passing the exams for becoming a High Court judge, you become a High Court judge. Somebody has to bestow you, and there is a ceremony, if you remember. The bestowal has to happen. Without the bestowal, just the mere qualification is not going to work. And Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers, mentions this, and he gives three examples. Bhalasya neha sharanam pitaro nrsimha nartasya chagadam udvati majjato no taptasya tat pratividir yah Iyanja seshtes tavad vibhutanuvritam tvad upekshitanam. The father and mother are not the protection for their child. Balasya iha na pitaro sharanam. So ultimately, the father and mother, they might try to protect the child, but ultimately, if the Lord does not, protect the child, nothing the father and mother can do. Medicine is not the protection for sick person. Na artasya cha aghadam. So the doctor might give the medicine to the sick person, and he might follow all the procedure, but still it will not guarantee that he will become all right. Ultimately, the Lord's bestowal is required. A boat is not the remedy for a person drowning in the ocean. Na udvati majjato nao. For those who do not accept the tvad upekshitanam tanuvritam, the remedies accepted by suffering people, taptasya tat taptasya tat pratividhir, in this world iha, are not a shelter at all. Na anjasa ishtaha. So this verse proves that, ultimately there is bestowal. If the Lord's mercy is not bestowed, even though you have the qualification, nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. So in this context, there is this two philosophies. One is called as the Karmavad, and other is called as the Daivavad. So Karmavad means what? Everything is in my hand. I will study, day and night, and I will get success. I will come first in the class. So everything depends on me. Everything is in my control. So this is the Karmavad philosophy, which is very, very prominent today. And today, most of the problems in the world are because of this Karmavad philosophy. But ultimately, the student can study and write the exams. But the evaluator who is evaluating, if he is not in a good mood, if he has fought with his wife, although the student has written very nice with the exam, he might not give the full marks and he might not come first. So ultimately, Daiva is there. So everything is in my hand when you have this concept, and then when the results don't come according to what you expected, then you can go into depression. And many people, cannot handle when the results come because they think everything is in my control. And when the results don't come according to their desires, because they don't have faith in God, they go into depression. They sometimes commit suicide. I know many cases where, they came second rank and they just could not handle it. And they committed suicide just because they came a second rank. And it happened. My sister's neighbor, she jumped from the fifth floor because she came second. And sometimes it can go to other extreme that, I want to come first, but I'm not thoroughly prepared. So I will not come first. So that's why I'll not give the exam. That is other extreme. Daivavad means what? Nothing is in my hand. What I can do. So I'll not study only. And I'll think, I'll just depend on God. So this is the other extreme, Daivavad. So we should, have a balance between the two. We should take the in-between path. We should do things thinking that everything is dependent on me. At the same time, we should always remember that ultimately Daiva sanction should be there. Without Daiva sanction, I cannot get success. So the example is, in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, when Bhishma fell, Duryodhan had to choose a commander-in-chief. And Drona thought that Bhishma might choose his close friend Karan. And for Drona, it would be humiliating to work under Karan. But Bhishma chose Drona, and Drona was very pleased. And Drona asked Drona asked Duryodhan, I'm very happy that you have made me the commander. What do you want me to do? So Duryodhan said, arrest Yudhishthir. And even Drona was surprised. Why did he not say kill Yudhishthir? Why arrest Yudhishthir? Yudhishthir was such a great Dharmaraj that even Duryodhan did not want to kill him. So why you want me to arrest him and not kill him? So then Duryodhan said that if Yudhishthir is killed in the battle, Arjuna and Bhima are going to go Basak and completely destroy the entire army of mine. But better arrest him, and I will again, have a gambling match and again send him on exile. So that was Duryodhan's plan. And Drona promised that in 2 days I will arrest Yudhishthir. And Bhishma fought with all his might for those 2 days. But nothing he could do. He was putting all his energy. And on the second night, Duryodhan came to the camp of the tent of Drona, and he said, you said that you will arrest Yudhishthir. What happened to that promise? And then Drona said, for the last 2 days, you have seen me that I have used all my weapons, all my strength. I put all my energy in the battle. But what to do? Daiva is not in my hands. And the bestower of Daiva is who? The bestower of Daiva? Who is the bestower of Daiva there? Anyone? Who is the bestower of Daiva? Lata Mataji. Who is the bestower of Daiva? Bestower of fruits. Krishna. Yes, it is Krishna. He is the charioteer of Arjuna. What I can do? So,
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sorry, my network was not working. And I couldn't hear him.
Everyone is attentively hearing. So it was the bestower of Daiva is sitting on the chariot of Arjuna. What I can do? So he could understand. He had this understanding. On the other hand, and there was the extreme example of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was repeatedly advised by great rishis, Vyasdeva, Maitreya Rishi, not to have this war because this will completely destroy the entire Kauravas. After repeated advice also, Dhritarashtra, because being blinded by the attachment to his son, he did not heed to the advice. And Vidura very heavily preached. And when Vidura preached that, you are the king, you can stop this. Otherwise, you will be the cause of the destruction of the entire Kaurava dynasty. And when he said this, Dhritarashtra said, if it is destined that, the Kaurava dynasty is to be destroyed, then who am I, an insignificant living entity, to stop what destiny is destined to do? So when Vidura heard this, Vidura was very heavy. He said that destiny of the destruction of the Kauravas will depend on your decision. On your decision. So your actions will ultimately, define the destiny. If you take the right action, then you can change the destiny. It's not that destiny is going to be locked. Destiny gets locked only when we perform the action. Just like a person on the 10th floor, he's standing and he's thinking, should I jump or should I not jump? But moment he jumps, his destiny gets locked that he's going to break his bones and die. So ultimately, if you take the right decision now, then you can avoid the destruction of the Kaurav dynasty. But he said, he was that, what I can do, ultimately it is destined. So these can be the extremes, the Karmavad and the Daivavad. So this philosophy we should be very clear. Now we'll come to the last paragraph. No, the Paribhu is there, and then the last paragraph is there. Paribhu is the greatest of all. Any questions you have about this? Karmavad, Daivavad? Vinita Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Yes.
Prabhuji, you explained both very nicely, and with example also we've understood. But in our daily life, like there are many things or many decisions to be taken. And sometimes we just forget that Daivavad part, and we make ourselves the important people to take decisions. How is that to be controlled or balanced or merged with both the ideas?
Oh, very, very good question. So first of all, understanding of the philosophy is very important. And Krishna begins by instructing how to work in Nishkam Karma Yoga. 2.47 in the Bhagavad Gita, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma faleshu kadacham, ma karma phala heturvo. So two things he's saying there. One is, don't be attached to the fruits of your results. Secondly, don't think you are the doer. So usually when we make decisions, we are attached to the fruits. I want to do this business so that I can earn so much. And, I am qualified. I can do this, and I am the doer. The doership sense is very strong. So for that, we have to train ourselves, firstly in the philosophical understanding. And when we start doing, we come to know that if we are attached to the fruits and we don't work in a detached spirit, then we cannot do our work in the present because our consciousness is focused in the future. What will be the result? And there is anxiety about the result. So we are caught up in that. But if we have that knowledge, then we will see ultimately the results are dependent on the Lord. What is my duty? I should do my duty without being attached to the results, whether they are positive or negative. When they are positive, you are elated. When they are negative, you are depressed. That means still you are not fixed in yoga. And when the results come, just like a Wimbledon match, when the player wins, immediately he'll raise his hands up with the cup holding, I did it, And when he loses, he'll put his head down with the bat he throws, So that sense of doership is there. So slowly, when you understand the philosophy and become free from, attachment to the results and free from the egoic sense of doership, then we can work in proper consciousness. And it is an art. And art means it comes with a lot of practice. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
I will now not take any questions because I want to finish these two paragraphs and then take questions. This is a very short paragraph regarding Paribhu. Paribhu means he is the greatest of all. I'll just take this and Shuddham Papa, Swayambhu and Shuddham Papam, and then take up questions later on. Paribhu, he is supreme. He is the greatest of all. So Prabhupada in the purport mentions God is described by Paribhu, greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to him. Samurdva. Sama and Urdhva. No one is equal or greater than him. Other living beings are described here as beggars who ask goods from the Lord. The Lord supplies the things the living entity desires. If the entities were equal to Lord in potency, if they were omnipotent and omniscient, there would be no question of their begging from the Lord, even for so-called liberation. And Prabhupada gives the definition of real liberation. Real liberation means to go back to Godhead. Liberation as conceived by an impersonalist is a myth, and begging for sense gratification has to continue eternally until the beggar comes to his spiritual senses and realizes his constitutional position. So Prabhupada very heavily condemns for that highest goal, even the Vedas proclaim that is liberation, moksha, because ultimately it is, the highest sense gratification to become God. And from a devotional perspective, it is condemned. So from a higher devotional perspective, Prabhupada is condemning it. And he's giving the highest understanding, Jiver Swarup Hoy, Krishnera Nitya Das. Now the next paragraph is Swayambhu, self-sufficient, and Shuddham, Apapam. So let us take that. Only the Lord is self-sufficient. And Lord Krishna appeared on earth 5,000 years ago. He displayed his powerful Asur and Shakasur, and there was no question of his having acquired such power through any extraneous endeavor. He is self-sufficient in himself. He doesn't have to take any external help to kill these asuras. He lifted the Govardhan hill without practicing weightlifting because he is self-sufficient. He danced with the gopis without social restriction and without reproach. So nobody can reproach, nobody can question the activities of the Lord. It's the highest, audacity of the conditioned souls to, question the activities of the Lord. He's beyond reproach. Although the gopis approached him with the paramount feelings of love, the relationship between the gopis and Lord Krishna is worshipped even by Lord Chaitanya, who was a strict sannyasi and the rigid follower of disciplinary regulations. To confirm that the Lord is always pure and uncontaminated, Shri Upanishad describes him as Shuddham, antiseptic, and Apapa Viddham, prophylactic. The proper translation of Shuddham, Apapa Viddham is very interesting. Antiseptic and prophylactic. So antiseptic means sometimes when you have a, kind of a burn, you can say, a wound, so you apply an antiseptic cream so that, it heals. And prophylactic means that, no further infection might, you might catch up. Just like, the COVID virus was there and you're taking shots so that you need not catch the virus again. So that is prophylactic. So the Lord purifies us and we get purified. That is antiseptic. Prophylactic means having been purified, we will see that no material contamination also will enter us. And that is what is the antiseptic and prophylactic. It's antiseptic in the sense that even impure thing can become purified just by touching him. The word prophylactic refers to the power of his acquisition. That's what Prabhupada explained. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 9:30-31, in the beginning a devotee may appear to be suduracharo, not well behaved, but he should be accepted as pure because he is on the right path. Sadhureva samantavya samvyak vyavasito hi saha. Yes, the terminology used in medical is curative and preventive. Curative and preventive. So curative are which cure the disease. So Krishna cures the disease of the heart, and the desires of kama, lodha, krodha, moha, mada, matsya. And after curing this disease, he will also prevent us from kama entering into us. So that is prophylactic. This is due to the prophylactic nature of Lord's association. The Lord is apart with them because sin cannot touch him. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, for there is no question of his being affected by sin. Because in all circumstances, he should come most purified. He is often compared to the sun. The sun extracts moisture from many untouchable places on earth, yet it remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by virtue of its sterilizing powers. If the sun, which is a material object, is so powerful, then we can hardly begin to imagine the purifying strength of the all-powerful Lord. If the sun is so powerful, imagine what is the Lord. So in this context, we just want to quote this verse. This is the Falashruti. Vikriditam Varjavadur Vadvadu Viridam Cha Vishnu Shraddhayanvito Anushuyat Atha Varnayetya Bhakti Param Bhagavati Pratilabdha Kamam Rudrogashwapanoti Achirena Dhira. Anyone who faithfully hears, Sunoti, describes, Varnayatya, the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan. Vikriditam Vajubhur Idam Cha Vishnu. Will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Bhakti Param Labate Bhagavati. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, that is of the heart. Ridrogam Ashu Apanoti Achirena. So this is how the Lord is both antiseptic and prophylactic. Okay. That ends the discussion of mantra 8. Any questions or clarifications? We can take one question. Devduti Kapil, you had a question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, I'm just trying to recollect. At that time,
to Karma Chaiva?
So I had one question from your yesterday's, like you said that in spiritual world there are only grihasthas, right? Like at that time I was just meditating on that, and the question popped up. Okay, then how do they beget children there?
We have our conception of things, but spiritual reality is quite different.
Yeah, exactly. So that
From our experience, how that matter expands here, there also spirit expands. So Krishna also is born in this material world. He's eternally in the Kaishore form in the spiritual world. There's no question of Krishna going through this childhood, and Balavastha and Paugandavastha and Kaishoravastha. But spirit also can expand, just like matter can expand, spirit can expand. So once you attain a particular here, I don't know, I don't want to speculate about how it happens in the spiritual world. But here in Bhaum Vrindavan, when the sadhana siddh, are allowed to participate in the Lord's pastime to further attain perfection and go back to the spiritual world, they take a birth in the womb of the gopis, and they can be again in male bodies or female bodies. If they have Madhuri Ras, they might be in female bodies. If they have Vatsalya or Sakya, they might be born as parents of Krishna or friends of Krishna. So they are in spiritual bodies. They are in spiritual bodies. And further purification, light traces are there, 0.001, maybe something like that. And they attain complete perfection. And when Krishna leaves back, they go back to the spiritual world as the sadhana siddha become the nitya siddha. So there, even in the spiritual world, your sarupa is there, your form is there, and your services are there, but you can change forms there, based on your desire. Just like in the material world, there are siddhis by which you can change forms. The devatas can change their forms. They are material bodies where we can change forms. And spiritual bodies also can do. But spirit also can expand just like matter can expand. That is my little understanding I have about it.
Okay. And I forgot the other actual question which I wanted to ask. So if I remember, I'll...
Yeah, you can record and send it, and then we'll answer it in the group. Yes, Dr. Archana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Srila Prabhupada has clearly mentioned that we shouldn't be jumping directly to the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. But for the sadhakas who are at the primary stage, we are reading the initial cantos. And if there is a curiosity to read 10th canto, so is it advisable to read, or we should wait till the
Yeah, I
till
should
we
not
finish
go
it?
into all the details right now in the class, but since the question has come up, briefly, I would like to say that Prabhupada mentioned that one should study the first and the second canto. And Prabhupada in the second canto mentioned the first and the second canto are compared to the lotus feet of the Lord. And as long as one is not free completely from lust, one should not even start with the third canto, he says. So one should read canto by canto, chapter by chapter, and come to the ninth canto. And Prabhupada says by the time one comes to the ninth canto, he should be a self-realized soul. And then enter into the 10th canto. So, but at the same time, Prabhupada gave the Krishna book so that you can, relish the pastimes of Krishna. But as sadhakas, in the beginning stages, when we read, especially while going through the Krishna book, we go through the Raspanchadhyaya, and if we get agitated or disturbed, then Prabhupada recommended not to, continue the reading. So one should ask their spiritual mentors and then do this. If we feel that we are getting disturbed, hearing the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, and we should then not read it. But this verse, Vikreditam Vrajabudha Idam Cha Vishnu, this actually is applicable to those who have attained Nishtha stage, who are qualified for Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti, and they can attain perfection of becoming Sadhya. They can attain Parabhakti. They can attain Parabhakti. So there's a lot to speak on this one verse, but that's not the subject now. So that's why I did not discuss much. Okay, so we'll stop here because we have already shot 7 minutes more than the scheduled time. Any questions further are there, you can send it and we will answer and post it in the group. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Isopanishads ki jai. Hare